All right, the next item on our agenda, Representative Davids, is a hearing House File 231, which is the taxpayer receipt. And so I have, let's delay it over. Let's see what's up there. Okay, sorry. This is my first time doing this part. So, Representative Davids, do you move that House File 231 be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus tax bill?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Excellent. So Representative Davids has moved that his bill be laid over for possible inclusion. Please present your bill, Representative Davids.
Well, thank you very much. And I'll give a brief overview, then maybe we can call on House research to actually say what it means here. So in House File 231, this is a bill where the goal is for taxpayer transparency. We create a receipt system to create more accountability and transparency for taxpayers within the system. That's what this bill does. And a little history here. This bill was carried in the past by Chair Marquardt, and I would like officially to hear the department's position on this bill. And also, you'll see that there's a cost in your nonpartisan House research summary on House File 231. It's $100,000 and it goes to $47,000. I would just suggest that the department just absorb that cost, which I think would be a good thing. And just remember, members, too much of a good thing, well, it's a good thing. And so I would really appreciate you supporting this bill. Maybe House research could give us a little more as to what it does, but that's basically what the bill does. And Madam Chair, I would never criticize you in any way, but you made a comment that kind of made me shiver a little bit when you said that you had a dumb question. Chairs have no dumb questions. That does not exist.
Thank you for clarifying that, Representative
Madam
Davids.
Chair, it was a very good question.
Thank you. And turning to Mr. Williams.
Chair Gomez, Representative Davids, and members, there's sort of two pieces of this bill. There's a requirement for the Minnesota Management and Budget, and then also a requirement for the Department of Revenue. Section 1 of the bill deals with the MMB piece of that. They have to, the bill requires them to publish and annually update an interactive taxpayer receipt. The receipt would describe the share of state general fund revenues or expenditures represented by major expenditure categories, such as transportation, health and human services, education, and so forth. And it would also, based on the user's income, which would be input by the user, estimate the amount of income tax, sales tax, alcohol, tobacco, and motor vehicle fuels tax paid by the user. And it would also require the interactive receipt to display data on performance goals. The piece for the Department of Revenue is Section 2 of the bill, and that just requires the Department of Revenue to allow individual income tax filers to opt in to receiving information about the receipt, either through email or U.S. mail. Section 3 is the appropriation, which Representative Davids mentioned. It's a $100,000 upfront appropriation in fiscal year 2024, and then it's the base is $47,000 ongoing.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Representative Davids.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And you'll notice I'm sitting up here with all my friends. And so I'm not aware of anyone that wishes to testify, but I'm at your discretion, certainly be open to anybody who wishes to testify for this bill, not against it. And you'll notice that we, with concerns, we'll say, you'll notice that I picked the top 5 tax areas, that could go to 6, 8, 4, whatever the committee would decide, but those are the 5 major ones, the top 5.
Great. Thank you, Representative Davids. Is there any member of the public that wishes to testify on House File 231? Please approach the stand and introduce yourself for the record and offer your testimony. I didn't mean to say approach the stand. That sounded really like we're in court. I know. Testifying table, there we go.
I'm going to just be brief. I've been around here a long time. My name is Mark Hughes, and I'm just a loyal member of the public. But I've been around here a long time, and I have watched Representative Davids work. And I hope by now most of you know I've supported in a lot of ways. And anything we can do to better our tax structure or make a more livable community tax-wise for people of the state of Minnesota, which we serve, I support, and I'm going to support this. But I also am kind of, want to make one more comment quick. I'm a little shook up today because I don't think it makes a difference if you're in the top 5%, the 139%. If we're working, we all pay taxes. And I'm going to probably make a lot of people mad, but I'm upset enough today to say maybe we should take a look at a flat tax, be it federal or state or anything, but maybe we should start addressing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wants to testify in House File 231? All right, I'm not seeing any. Is there any member discussion? Maybe I'll just discuss something quickly. I want to thank Representative Davids for bringing this forward. As he mentioned, this has been a top priority of now Commissioner Marquardt, and so we sort of were doing this like as a sweet thing for the commissioner, but he has been called away to more important business. They're presenting part of their budget right now, but this. Chair Lisslegard and I kind of talk about this in terms of like the reason that there's so much, one of the reasons that there's so much attention on property taxes, like when we go out and talk to our communities, is because we, if you own a home, you get that statement twice a year. And it does outline like, this is sort of the jurisdiction that collects the different portions of the property taxes that we each pay every year. If you're a homeowner, you get it. You don't get it if you're a renter. But this effort is really just to kind of provide more information to make those connections so that people do understand more about, both about kind of how much tax we're paying over time, but also, it makes this connection to, as it says as we were talking about in the overview, about like what your taxes get you, like what do they buy in the world, and what are the sort of, to help people think through, what are the things in our communities that we all rely on, that every individual and family and business in our community knows that like we need our streets to be of a decent quality, we need them to be plowed, we need someone to answer the 911 call when we make a 911 call, and we need education for our kids. So yeah, just my gratitude to Representative Davids for bringing this bill forward. This also, you'll have to tell me if this has been a long time tradition, but certainly since I've been in office, in the tax committee, we have discussions about some of the big issues and some of those places where we diverge, but we do so in a respectful way, and we try to delve into those issues and sometimes those places of divergence with rigor and respect for one another. And part of that is that usually that the first bill that's heard is from a member of the opposite party of the chair. And so I really appreciate even though this is a Commissioner Marquardt priority, or has been when he was the chair, you bringing this forward, because I just think it helps us, to remind us, right, that we're all moving together. We're moving forward together in a good way, with sort of the understanding that there are going to be differences, but we're going to try to find those places where we can agree on good policy that's good for all of the people in our communities. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And just a couple points here. First of all, the history, as I'm aware of it, I believe that after the 1990 elections, I became chairman of the Commerce Committee. It took 7 committees rolled together called the Commerce and Regulated Industries. If you wrote a check for it, it came through my committee, or our members' committee, I should say. It wasn't my committee. And I thought, what could we do? Because we've been in the 90s, some really nasty fights in committees. And I thought, if there's some way we could lessen this just a bit. So I thought, well, what if we heard a Democrat bill first? Not a Democrat bill to hear and kill, but a Democrat bill to hear and pass. And the first one, just for the history buffs here, was Representative Chris Haskamp from the Brainerd area needed some help on a banking issue. And so we heard that bill and we passed it and the governor signed it into law. So it does work, and I think it hopefully sets the tone for a more respectful committee, which I think you've done a great job at, Madam Chair. So one other point, and I'm going to get off just a little bit here, off track, but that's allowed in committee. On the House floor, Speaker Hartman would certainly rule me out of order. But we're making comments like the fastest conformity bill ever. And I need help with this with staff because I don't know if that's quite correct, because I think the fastest one was in 2001 with the disaster bill, the tsunami bill. And I think that went a couple days quicker, but that was one issue. We had has to be the fastest broad-ranging conformity bill in history. Could staff help me out here? Am I correct in that? What's the, I call it the Jimmy John's bill, freaky fast. Madam Chair?
Yeah, Mr. Williams, we might have to dig back into the history books on that one, but.
Chair Gomez and Representative Davids, working with our fiscal staff, and especially our fiscal staff, compiled a list of recent sort of larger tax conformity bills, I'd say over the last 15 or 20 years. And the previous earliest conformity bill signed into law was January 13th of 2017. So we beat that by 1 day this year. However, I'm not certain one way or another if that disaster bill that you're describing was earlier. I don't know if that was included on our list, so maybe we can follow up with you on that after committee.
Madam Chair, Mr.
Representative Davis.
If you could, because, again, that was one issue. It was the tsunami bill. Republicans and Democrats came together, and that was a conformity. We conformed to what the feds did. So just for fun, kicks and giggles, it'd be interesting to see. So the other thing, Madam Chair, if I could, since we're not on the House floor, for members of this committee, use the Department of Revenue. We got the great research staff, we've got great partisan staff, but from Ms. Bears and Mr. Holt, or Commissioner Holt, the Deputy Commissioner Holt, these guys are like really smart. Just like our House researchers and our partisan research, if you got a question, don't beat your head against the wall, just ask them because they're really good at what they do. Thank you, Madam Chair. And that had nothing to do with the bill whatsoever.
No, that's great. No problem there. I know that Representative Robbins, did you have a question or comment you wanted to add?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Davids, I did have a question, and I apologize if I missed this, but the taxpayers inputting into the system quite a lot of information about how much alcohol or tobacco they buy, how many miles they drive by car, major purchases they've made. Is that data protected, and how long is the department going to store all that data?
I would let the department, Madam Chair, if I could respond to that.
Absolutely.
I do believe, Madam Chair, you have to opt in, so you wouldn't have to.
Mr. Williams, did you have
Chair Gomez and Representative Robbins, so the bill is silent on whether or not any of this data would be stored or held over. It's sort of as Representative Davids mentioned, you would opt into receiving information about this website on your individual income tax return. So a taxpayer would have the option of going and interacting with this application or not, but the bill doesn't speak one way or another about whether or not any of the data classification related to interacting with this system.
Representative Robbins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Williams and Representative Davids. I would just suggest that perhaps that be considered or referred to judiciary, because I do think that's something, taxpayers expect their data is protected, but if it's not explicitly in there, we might want to consider an addition. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Robbins. Rep. Davids?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Robbins, in just visiting quickly here with the department, it's not going to be stored. It's not going to be stored, but that's very important.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. Is there any further discussion? Not seeing any. House File 231 is laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus tax bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Thank you very much, Representative Davids.